And we're live. It is the AutoGraders BetaSaaSers Instructors Mooka What's It's meeting that we have on Fridays. The big challenge that we've had this week is that Google, as part of their process of migrating Hangouts on Air to YouTube Live, which is not in itself a problem for us because we've used YouTube Live for a long time, suddenly, halfway through the week, the Google Hangouts API, including the buttons, stopped working. So the buttons that we've been using reliably on our site for the last 2 years now do not work. They take you to a separate page that says, oh, you should go to the My Live Events page on YouTube in order to start your event, which is all well and good. I mean, you can still in principle start a Hangout, but there's a lot of manual work of like pasting links into different places in order to get the Hangout working. So that has been a serious pain this week and has, basically put a bit of a dampener on MOOC pairing activities and Agile Ventures projects things. Although actually the Agile Ventures projects, we've got quite a lot of people all excited about it at the moment. So they've been working around that. But yeah, that's just a big pain, really.
Well, to every problem, there's often a silver line. And the link that came up in Slack, I, for the first time, was able to click and join.
There we go. There we go. Indeed, it is. Well, my blog post this morning was called, what was it called? It was called Opportunity in Disguise, all about this, in which I was kind of arguing for it. It's obviously a very good disguise, but I think it's an interesting situation because we have built on top of this great offering from Google. We've got a lot out of it, I think, over the years. We've certainly met many people. It's supported many of our meetings. It's been very, very useful. We can still run it, but as we've come to rely more and more on it and we've integrated it, they've changed their API. I've got a Stack Overflow post that's been massively upvoted on Stack Overflow. I'll just show it to you, which is where the YouTube API folks are saying, this is where you should be asking for support. Asked 3 days ago. Google has said nothing. One might get the impression that they don't seem to care. I think with things like Google Code or Google Wave, Google does some very, very cool stuff, and then sometimes they decide to go in a different direction. And what's frustrating in this case is that the documentation for the Google Hangout buttons and so on is still up there. It's still on their site saying, oh yeah, you can do it. It's all there. What have you? They haven't. There's nothing in here to say this has been deprecated, and I think it is just an oversight on their part that as part of changing over to this YouTube live streaming API, they hadn't necessarily realized that they were invalidating other stuff that they specify should work. So it is rather frustrating. But that's again what's particularly frustrating because it's not open source. So I mean, one thing if they could give us parts of it and we would continue with it. So anyway, we've got to find a different solution if we want to carry on automating this part of our flow. But that's all about my stuff. We should focus on your guys' stuff. I did just open over here a second ago. Yes, the issues. Stacey and Richard, you're here. You have priority. Anything particular on your mind? Let's start with Stacey. Do you need addressing or resolved at all?
No, the students are struggling with Rails, but we expected that. But the AutoGrader and everything is working for them at least.
Right. I I've had like some very brief conversations with Stacey. Is that when she first agreed to adopt the curriculum and go with what I was doing, I was surprised with how quickly and easily she did that with no second thoughts. In my mind, with that question, had like all sorts of like issues, and now I think she's starting to understand why at least I would have second thoughts, because it is a bunch of work with starting out of the blue and a lot of issues and stuff to deal with the students. Stacey, I did mention to you all those extra tips that I have in my Canvas.
Yep. I set up the page just like you have, so my students have the same tips.
Yeah, and originally when I did that in a wiki in our other course management system, and my idea was that students would also contribute, sort of their thought tips, but most of what was all of what was contributed was not helpful. Like usually it was just like space bars and accidentally press keys. So
I'm finding students mostly are having trouble with how the passing of information goes from the view to the controller. So I've had to explain a lot of times about, params and session, and that's what's giving them the most trouble, it seems.
Right. And are you, what I would love is force them, and I think I want to put this into either the Rails tutorial or homework or chapter 4 walkthrough, some required use of the debugger, because say, oh, I don't have really the time or the inclination or whatever, and it's like just one guy yesterday when I showed him how simple it was, type in these 7 characters, debugger,
yeah,
whatever.
then you can evaluate things one step at a time.
You can see and session and everything else, and it's like you just said, oh man, this would have saved me like hours, and that's invariably.
Yeah, I've been showing the students the debugger too, and I may actually demo it at the very beginning of class on Tuesday, just because they're really not, they're not grokking that it's going to save them time, right?
Right.
But yes, mostly it's them trying to figure out how to pass things from the view to the controller that's giving them trouble, and persistence we haven't even covered yet. My first task was just to get them through part 1, sorting.
Yeah. And also, we can consider in the future, even time, because my TA is available right now, helping students, and a lot of the times people don't come, and
yeah, we should actually pool our TAs in some regard, and just have all those hours set up for anybody. But yes,
and the other thing at some point, but yeah, that's good.
The other thing, I think maybe some exercises just in message passing would be helpful before we make them do this assignment.
Or examples within the assignment,
exactly.
Like setup kind of things, like try this and try that, sort of like we could come up with our own Rails intro homework walkthrough.
That's what I'm thinking, and we could use the debugger.
Not only set it up, but try out this and that and the other thing.
Yeah, and make them use the debugger fat, and then they'll be prepared to use it for the next bit.
Yeah, Sam, how do you feel? Just to include you for a change.
Sure.
One of our
Wake up, Sam.
Oh, I've gone from hero to host. I'm hosting your conversation. No, go on.
I mean, and I'm this is sort of just theoretically, it's sort of interesting that Armando chose to do a Heroku deployment and use a Heroku URL for the AutoGrader sort of input. But I think that also sort of non-optimal in a bunch of ways. In some ways, I wouldn't have minded like 2 submissions or 2 things. It's like give us like something like we do for the future homeworks.
Right, where you have to submit some of the code as well.
And maybe as the Heroku as well, for a variety of reasons. But if we had done that, then we could have more easily even added like some tests to say, okay, do this or that to the homework. And I'm thinking with the way it's submission is really a separate vehicle.
Well, and not only that, but a student, what's to stop one student from taking another student's URL and just pumping it into the AutoGrader?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very it's sort of in terms of them copying something, it reduces their work enormously. I'm sure many students have been extremely grateful that it's only a URL they have to put in and not I mean, if there was some sort of like, if you could tie the URL to the ownership of a authenticated against the student's account, then you could incentivize them in other directions. I mean, yeah, and I think that the whole, well, there's all sorts of things wrong with that homework. I mean, I think I was going to just to link back to what you're saying earlier on, is I think I have MOOC students for which the debugger, I mean, bootcamp students. I mean, I think showing people how to really use the debugger, like, and really showing them how to use it can save them so much time. It's just a terrible shame that we don't have kind of more rounded resources to say, this is how you could use the debugger to save you hours of your life. And it's you know, we could really use, although there are many great things in the course, that's one of the things that it lacks.
Well, and it would be nice.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a chapter on that, or a section on that, on debugging. It would be nice to throw some examples right in the text on how to use the debugger.
I mean, Armando, I think occasionally, does he? I think he at least in one of the screencasts or in the MOOC, he does use the debugger. But it's kind of, it's one of these things, a bit like the attitude towards Git and the debugger throughout the course is a bit like, well, you kind of already know how to use Git, and you kind of already know how to use the debugger. And I think, of course, the reality, and maybe that's true for Berkeley students, but the reality is true for a lot of people. They just don't. And so yes, that would be I think a big win to have that kind of material available. Yes.
Well, just the understanding of Heroku and Git. My students keep trying to push things to Heroku, but they haven't got their local repository up to date.
No.
And they're like, I made the changes here. Why is it not reflected in Heroku? And I'm like,
well, and indeed, you know, conceptually, and there is an appendix in the textbook on that. That I helped Armando update, and you know, drew a new diagram for him. I don't know if it actually got in there and so on. Yeah, but I think this is
are useful, Stacy, if you haven't like focused on them. And I try and remind my students about it, but probably don't do a good job about. They're good summaries of.
Yeah, but I think we the biggest problem, it seems to me, is that they have been relegated to appendices or afterthoughts, and of course the reality is the majority of students will just not look at them. And I think it would, in the ideal world, we would have kind of deployment to Heroku and understanding Git flow and understanding debugging as a kind of a first-class citizen, so to speak, because they're just absolutely essential. John Rafrano, who's teaching a course at NYC, he was just pointing out to me that some students had been a bit confused about how in the MOOC I'd been, the latest open source assignment that they have is to do some pull requests, is, you know, them being conceptually a bit adrift in terms of understanding a pull request. And he sent me a PDF of the slides from him, and he does a whole hour on understanding open source Git flow and pull requests and so on. It's absolutely wonderful. And you know, for our project course next year, I would plan to pull that in. I mean, I guess the process going forward is, you know, I probably have more leeway to bring materials into the project course, and so maybe we can get more materials into the project course on Heroku, on debugging, and on pull requests, and then once they've been polished there a bit, we can try and move them towards them being in the main course as well.
Okay. Any reference that you add to notes or whatever?
Yeah, Stacy, what's your GitHub URL again?
It's Watson SL.
Okay. It comes up if I remember to type Watson first. There we go. Yes. Sorry, Richard, you were saying any notes to update?
Yeah, well, you said like a PDF slides or whatever. And if those are open to check them out.
Yeah, I mean, I got all these ones from John Rafrano, and it wasn't. He said to me, feel free to reuse anything you need. And so this is from his course. This is social coding with Git. I mean, I'm just sort of like, yeah, I want students to do this whole thing. So he's got like this whole thing about understanding social coding, you know, like the process of how people contribute, who's reviewing it, how CI works.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like this. And like, then he's got like Git branch, you know, I mean, Armando does cover the branching kind of workflow, but I think out of context, does it go on? And then he's talking about, you know, he's got all the repositories and cloning and forking, and, you know, I mean, he's sort of, this course is actually kind of specifically on DevOps. Look at this, and he's going through and he's explaining, you know, all like that.
Issue assigning and stuff. That's
all these things. I was just sort of skimming through it now, and he's like, then also it's like, you know, how to do this. I mean, I think the same thing with pull requests, the same thing with Heroku, which is understanding about your local repo versus the remote repo, and about.
That's a great diagram, because students get stuck if they want to revert. They're like, which things do I use to go back?
Yeah. I mean, I think that you know, there is this, the same with and you can see, and this is like he's got hundreds and hundreds of slides. I mean, he's obviously got, this is a great resource. I'm hoping we'll get more and more stuff from him, and I can share them with everybody. I think there's a whole sequence of things through the course, which I think, you know, includes the Heroku, it includes Git, it includes you know, migrations and understanding the like develop, production and test and so on. That once you've got the conceptual model in your mind, you can kind of have a fighting chance of like working out what's going on. But before you've got that conceptual model straight, you're just basically in pain. You're just bashing against different, and kind of, why did it not do the thing I wanted to do? And
well, it's like this homework 1, or homework 3 rather, I'm making the students each submit their own Heroku link, and I'm encouraging them to push to GitHub, and then have each of them pull into their own Cloud9, and then each push to Heroku, just because they need the experience.
Yes.
Pushing and pulling to and from things, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So I'll certainly share more as I can. I mean, I guess and we'll see how we go. Is there anything else? I mean, Janet opened an issue here related to, you know, I think some problem she had, that there wasn't a gem file in, like, she was pointing the students to the SaaS book Ruby Calisthenics, but using Richard's grader. But I'm querying with her about that.
Wait,
go on.
One of my TAs used my account and updated that gem file to solve a problem we were experiencing in class. As just like, as an experiment, we weren't even 100% sure if it you know, would solve the issue. So it seems like probably a good idea, and we should probably put in a pull request, I assume, if that's.
Yeah, please do. I'm not sure how. I think having gem files throughout is eminently sensible, and I think, you know, it's just the fact that all the other ones do not have gem files, and that one just was you know, because it's not in the MOOC or in the UC Berkeley class anymore. I think it's become a second-class citizen. So, but yeah, improvements that you've made that can be passed back to that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else on your mind, Richard?
Only the you know, great spread of cream cheese and lox and bagels, and that's waiting for me in the other room.
Oh,
well, that sounds like a serious issue that you should address close to immediately. You know, I observed one of the things that's happened since we've moved to this issues in the Git repo is I haven't been doing this like big review of previous items and just sort of relying on people to bring things to my attention if they're. I mean, I'm kind of. I was thinking that at some point it would be nice to do a bit of a review. Today, with me trying to fix these things with Adventures, I'm kind of, you know, unless there's something on fire for either one of you, I'm tempted to sort of say, okay, it all seems under control, and check in with you next week.
That works for me.
All right.
Okay.
Good show. Well, do enjoy that spread. That sounds
I think I can make it next week. I'm also going to be on the verge of traveling next week. I'm bringing up 12 students to Chapel Hill for a program for the programming competition, the ACM programming competition. But I think I'll be able to make this meeting before I leave too. So
cool.
Here we go.
All right.
Okay. Have a good week.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah, share more as I can. I mean, I guess and we'll see how we go. Is there anything else? I mean, Janet opened an issue here related to, you know, I think some problem she had that there wasn't a gem file in, like, she was pointing the students to the SaaS book Ruby Calisthenics, but using Richard's grader. But I'm querying with her about that.
Yeah. Wait.
Go on.
One of my TAs used my account and updated that gem file to solve a problem we were experiencing in class. As just like, as an experiment, we weren't even 100% sure if it you know, would